Welcome to this edition of What Makes a Difference, and we are delighted to have Peter Kirkpatrick. And this is a different introduction to what we normally do. So this is a little poem I wrote about Pete. Little giant, the little-bodied giant with the wizened face, your tongue a caster of spells, the hills you traversed and the valleys descended, bearing the light and guiding the way. The little-bodied giant, the loving heart of the universe. So I met Pete at possibly that was one of the best military charities that I've ever witnessed or known about, and that was called Future for Heroes. Pete made a huge impression, not only on myself, with his sense of humour, his doggedness, and his enthusiasm to help people. And from that day, I've always admired and respected Pete, and I've wanted him to come on the podcast for quite a while. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about Pete. Just absolutely fantastic bloke.
Welcome, and we're really looking forward to the conversation, Pete. It's lovely to have you.
What do they say when you meet people in real life? It's absolutely.
Yeah, well, what little we know about people that we take away.
I know. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm so glad you're here, Pete.
Yeah.
So you started off life, didn't you, with the RAF, and that could have been life in logistics, wasn't it? And then you witnessed an individual and his swearing and his lack of wanting to do paperwork, so you decided to go into mountain rescue?
Oh, it's I don't know if people will relate to that. You know, I didn't join the Air Force because I wanted to defend the nation. I joined the Air Force because I wanted to get away from Hull. And not my parent. I had good parents, so it wasn't that. And I went in at 17, and I had no awareness of the world. And they offered me a year's apprenticeship as a supplier, and I just said, yeah. I didn't know what it meant. But the reality of that after the training, it was for me the most boring job in the world. But they had a system there where you could join the mine rescue team at the weekends, a bit like a part-time fireman, and that kind of was like an alternative lifestyle. You could not wash, not shave, drink lots of beer, run over the hills. It's a bit like the army, is it?
It is, yeah. Well, we're renowned for not washing, aren't we, in the army?
I know.
And drinking beer, yeah.
And then that made me then change job to become a PTI. And I've been very lucky that became part of my career. I did it professionally in the mine rescue system, and then worked in mountain centres. I became a bit of a what do you call them? Woolly hatters? You hear that expression? No.
Yeah. And is that how? Sorry, Pete. Is that how your lad got into mountaineering?
Is that how I got into it?
No, your son.
Yeah. Well, part of a lot of people may identify with that. My passion for the hills and all of that, it kind of is all consuming. And my first marriage suffered because of that. So then I became a father, a father, but not a father, paying child maintenance. And the only cheap way of entertaining them was to drag them to the hills. Luckily, I've got a son who kind of really took to it. The other two survived it, but never went. But the definite distinction in my life, so all my life was about rescue, mountains, all like that. There's a lot to that, apart from the hero bit, to make it work, to look after everybody. And then I got into young people, training people. I missed a bit out. The RAF asked me then go back to the real Air Force to I always do that sign. I'm doing like bracket sign, like communication, teamwork, leadership, all those buzzwords for young people. And the way then was very, very traditional, but it was so much different from that family thing we had in the mountain rescue system. So I went to a place called Braithy Hall to find out how alternative ways of treating people, and that changed my life. So then I got involved with young people, and my desire to climb the hardest mountain evaporated. The challenge was managing myself to work with these people who told you to fuck off or didn't do as they was told, you know.
Before we started recording, Pete, because this isn't the first conversation we've had, we've chewed the fat over many a philosophical topic in the last time we met.
Yeah.
Great conversation. And no doubt it'll probably go down those routes today as well. But I wanted to come back to the conversation we had just before. Because we were talking about, well, first of all, we asked your permission. And Rich asked your permission if it was okay to share his poem about you and that you would be comfortable with that. But that was also, I suppose, to give you a bit of forewarning of it, to make sure you were comfortable with it. But we also were debating our responses to these things sometimes, because I think that's also quite pertinent for a lot of people. And it's impacted very heavily sometimes on how we respond to life, how we view ourselves sometimes. And it was that simple part of acknowledging a compliment and your value from someone else when they express it to you that we were having that brief discussion about.
Do you want me to tell my story?
Well, I'm inviting you to debate it with us because I think it's pertinent and I think it impacts a lot of us.
Yeah. To dig a bit deeper into that story, I think we all got different personalities as the product of our upbringing. So I've got a round, smiley face and I smile naturally. It becomes part of me. So I tend to get along with a lot of people, and I think I've been given a hard work gene. And I was now still in the RAF, but I went on something called Youth at Risk, some really troubled kids. There was that trouble, they had about 20 kids and 120 people to look after them on a 7-day residential. Some of those were from America and some of those were part of their community. And it was really, really intense. And this big black American called Derek, he was like giving me a few compliments for what I was doing. Yeah, I was just a cog in the wheel. And he said, "Hey, man, that was really good." And I could do that differently, shrugging it off or making a joke. And he said this. I don't know if you can imagine a big, towering black guy, really, he got right in my face and he said, "Look, motherfucker, I'll just give you some soul food, man." And he spat it back in my face. "If you do it again, I ain't giving you any more, motherfucker. It's soul food. It'll make you grow. Fucking eat it." Fucking hell. And that changed my attitude completely. Is that what I do? And then through thinking about it and talked to other people, they said, if you don't, thank people for that, because it takes a lot to pay a genuine compliment. And if you don't understand it more, say, "Well, can you tell me why you said that?" Then you've got some data to say, "Well, I fooled you," or I can do that again. Yeah. So, and I've told that story to a lot of people, and you can see what diet they've been lived on. Has it been compliments? Has it been sarcasm? Has it been silence? Yeah. And to know your value, to know your love, to know you're nobody, huge, huge thing. And the next level, which I've never gone to, is actually ask for it in a nice way. How are you finding me? What am I like? How do I piss you off? At the right place and the right time. Yeah. Motherfucker.
Yeah, but words of wisdom indeed. I think sometimes we forget that when we discount or when we, in our awkwardness, bat it off or brush it back because it's making us feel uncomfortable, then we also then make the other person feel uncomfortable for something that they meant with every good intention and meant as a gift to us.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes we just have to sit with our own awkwardness in and take the gift.
Wow.
Gifts are something we can choose to accept or not accept.
Well, yeah, very true. And some things that people will wrap as a gift might not necessarily be, but when that feedback is warm and complimentary, even if it is something that we might not necessarily believe about ourselves, I still think that sometimes that first step in believing it is being willing to be awkward when you accept it.
It's almost, I have this analogy as well about some things in life you need to treat like if you're a meat eater, like you paid a lot for this steak, so chew it well, savor it rather than gulp it down, really taste it. But you made me think a young Glaswegian lad called Alistair. He was from a Catholic, whatever, public school, and they all came down to Braithey, and they all had mass and prayers on the lawn like they've got. Alistair, that wasn't his scene. He was a bit of a rebel, and so we got on well. And at the end of it, he said this to me. He said, "Pete, I'll remember you for the rest of my life." And that was so powerful. And I've used it now for a few occasions. It's a really, we do remember for people for the rest of their life, for good or bad, but we actually verbalise that. And to have that verbalised was a huge gift he gave me. Could be enemies there as well.
Indeed, yeah. They'll hunt you down and chase you.
Like to get you.
So what was it that you brought back from Braithey back to the RAF? Because obviously there's all the, as you said, all about cliches, all these buzzwords, cliches, leadership and morale and self-discipline and all that kind of stuff. What was that difference that Braithey made to you and your perception of how the RAF could improve their leadership and development?
This is my interpretation of it, that I'm not better than you. I'm here to support you till you become the best you can, rather I'm here to tell you what. Sense of humour, showing your human side, and also imparting skills and knowledge, questioning, listening, dressing like them rather than superior to them. Just being it wasn't a popularity contest, but just being the real you rather than. And then when I left to work with officer training and that, and trying to pass on this as well. But the big fear of instructors or those in authority was that you lose control of them. You don't know what they're going to say. That was their big fear. If I just let them speak anything, they can say anything. How brilliant is that? But a lot of people were scared about that. I think times have moved on now.
Sorry, was that last bit?
I think times have moved on, I hope.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Marines were always ahead of the game, I think, from what they tell me.
And I was chatting to one officer a couple of years ago now, and so he was training reservists, and they brought in more positive psychology. They're using things like NLP to enhance the training and the outcomes for the soldiers that they're training.
And was it well received?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the way that if you read on social media and people go, oh, the basic training's like X, Y, and Z, and people go, it's not like it was in my day. Oh, no, good.
Yeah.
Why have you wardrobe thrown out because it's just not good enough? You know, why Why be smashed around and beasted? Yeah, okay, people deserve maybe a bit of punishment here and there, but not to have your locker thrown out and beasted for senseless reasons.
Yeah, belittle
something. There's got to be a reason behind it.
Yeah, it's so I just focus on that word control. You know, I've worked with people in the fringes of the criminal system or like that, or struggling in their home life, and part of that is their desire to have control of a situation by threats, by violence, by bribery, all those things which actually create problems for them and the people that's been inflicted on. So that fear of loss of control is the really fundamental, basic physiological one, isn't it? No, I got to try and control, especially if you're a man. You know.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that comes down to how we measure worth, our own worth, and the worth of others? So when I'm listening to you, Pete, what I hear is almost like that coaching attitude, which is, it's not about whether you're better than me or not. It's about helping you become the best that you can be, you can be. So that what you're almost instilling is that sense of pushing for personal best, not so that win and lose doesn't come into it. It takes competition, or potentially unhealthy competition where there's a loser out of the role, and gives everybody the potential to win, because it's the pushing to be better today than I was yesterday, to learn and to grow and progress.
I agree with you, but I'm curious what gets in the way. And part of, I think about it, and is it just a man thing, your ego? I think ego gets in the way of wanting to be the expert, wanting to control, wanting to do it my way. And if you're in a system where you're judged on being smart, being efficient, being precise, holding discipline, I think some of the people get confused, I think. Mm-hmm. Or they do what's been done before.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem with the armed forces. People hide behind their rank. Yeah. And they're not a very good leader.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people in the public sector and here.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a common thing, you know. Mm. Do you know who you're speaking to?
Yeah.
Isn't a lot of that, and I think we've discussed it repeatedly, we see it coming up time again, I think so do you, Pete, is that indoctrination within the armed forces of it's not about you, it's about everybody else. It's the don't stand out, don't stick out, don't be better than anybody else, because your role is to be part of that team, that unit, and therefore it's almost like there's a time and a place for individuality, but it becomes quite limited in terms of performance. Certain things will be pushed, but at the same point, there's almost like the mixed messaging of push, but don't stick out.
I think you're right, but you're making me think also. People talk about, all veterans, or we have these characters. The service loves characters at the same time, but they don't want them working for them.
No. Well, often the irony is, Pete, as you mentioned, is the guy who is, or the lady who's like the most disciplined, got the best turnout and all that sort of stuff. When they go out into the field, they're a bag of shit. They can't operate out in the field. But the guy, who's who turns out like a sack of shit in the morning, might be the best operator you ever come across.
Yeah.
They go downtown, kicking off, having a fight, and all that sort of stuff. And often it is they're the people you want in the field.
Misplaced energy.
Yeah.
They have these guys, what you call misfits or round pegs. Yeah. And I'd see that in young people as well. You get the ones not conforming, they've got something that if you could channel it in the right direction. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I went to a military reunion this weekend, a Scottish Mine Rescue thing. So there's lots of stories about all the all the misfits, all the individuals. It wasn't about one-to-one.
Yeah. Well, I bet your name was top of the list, was it, Pete?
Well, it's funny how people tell stories and I think, I'm sure you're making that up. Yeah.
Completely misremembered.
Yeah, misremembered. Oh. Yeah.
Do you think that issue, though, blows over into that transition into civilian life? Because it's almost kind of like, I've got to take responsibility for everything, but I can't claim worth in anything.
Is that like suppressing something in you, or?
Well, yeah, but I think it's that almost like ethos of my job's to bring everybody around me home alive, and in turn they do the same. Yeah? So it's kind of instilled that you look out for everybody else and they in turn look out for you. You don't look out for yourself, they do. But what that then translates to when you leave the armed forces is actually you still do that, but nobody does that for you. And if you have that reluctance to accept and acknowledge your own individual worth because that's something you've struggled with, then that can leave you quite vulnerable in that external world.
So the support that you experienced before is not there, and you feel vulnerable, protected, confused. Yeah.
Well, it's that old adage, isn't it, Pete, of you're that little cog in that big green machine, as it were.
Yeah.
So all your values and worth is wrapped up into all of that. And all that counts is the mission and completion of that mission.
I don't know, that's a bridge. I was obviously thinking about this podcast. Talking to someone, not everybody. We talked about the settlement, what we're going to call that. It tends to focus on, I never went really through it myself, but CVs, interview technique, mechanics, housing, all the practicality of real life. And I was talking about, I think you've had a podcast about identity. You actually almost you're going through a grieving process. And something that allows you to do that through some support to look about what you're going to leave, what your first sense of loss or acceptance or anger, whatever it is. There is for some that grieving process which goes on for the rest of their life. They're always looking back. And it takes a long time till you start looking forward about the people around you now.
Yeah. And there's possibly as well is that sense of abandonment. So you walk out the gate, ID card's handed in, and you've got to get, if you want to get back in, you've got to show your driver's license or whatever it is to get back in that gate, even if you're allowed back in there. 2 seconds ago, you're still serving. Yeah. That's a big thing to take on for people, because it's that all-encompassing lifestyle that we talk about, and then go, where am I off to now? What am I going to do next? Yeah,
because everybody's got a reputation in a brigade or regiment, haven't they? Everybody knows everybody in a way,
Yeah.
Yeah, and now you're just a nobody.
Yeah, it was one of the Greek philosophers. He was on about that the city should be no more than 5,000 people, because it's big enough for everybody to know each other, and kind of like you can got your own privacy, but you know enough people to move around in that sort of arena.
Yeah. So big loss, because I'd worked a lot with civilians before that was less of a. I'd revalued civilians, if I'm going to call them that. Met some great people.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people in the forces are conditioned to think about, isn't it? Oh, civilians are X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And then obviously, likewise, we can get the obverse with civilians thinking, oh, typical squaddy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or typical crab, whatever they are, Matlow.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why.
So there's all these stereotypes we have about one another that aren't necessarily true.
No. I don't know why, but people say, "Were you in the RAF? Really?" Oh, I never believe that.
Well, as they say, you're civvies in uniform, aren't you?
No, it's probably because the bothies don't come with indoor running water, central heating, and luxury towels. So it doesn't fit what they know.
Oh God, yeah. A few future heroes, and now on Samaritans. You talk to a lot of service people about. And definitely a theme for some is that nobody understands me. I don't feel comfortable, and even with their own families,
Yeah,
they're hiding part of themselves or trying to run their families like a platoon.
Well, I think sometimes that's the part that's forgotten in a way, in that when you leave service, actually the terms of your relationships, all your relationships change, because you're in a different phase in your life. That means that you're learning new expectations, new behaviours. You're more present. You're more there. The terms on which the relationship is based, your availability is all changing.
Well, we had that conversation, didn't we? It was brought up. So about 3 weeks ago now, Pete, we ran a workshop in South Wales. And one of the people commented on there that I think he's working with a former warrant officer. And this guy said, well, I'm a warrant officer in the army. He said, well, you're not anymore, are you? You're out, you're a civilian. So people still can hold on to those identities and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's the presence, though, isn't it? In that you're now in that role permanently. It's not as if you're there for a short period of time and you're gone again because you're deployed. You're there all of the time. You're home all of the time. The rhythm of that has utterly changed, and as a result, that puts different pressures. It amplifies different things.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Slight digression from that. So when I was doing my mountain rescue thing, I involved 3 weekends out of force. I was full time, so I'd get a day off during the week, and then they're almost like a 6-day week. But I got one full weekend a month. Then eventually it came to an end, and you and my wife, and I was saying, "Oh, that's great! No more weekends." Said, "What we're doing this weekend?" Said, "Well, I know what I'm doing. You can't get sworn in here and after 10 years." And so I said, "Bloody hell, you're right. That she's created her own life. That. So that was a big learning curve for me. That I wasn't. She loves me and all that, but I wasn't. A sense of the universe, Yeah,
and you sent us an attachment in an email, didn't you? When we were setting this podcast up, and about a young Indian lad.
Yeah. About the goats, that one.
No, about the bus. And so he's off to play football. So he was watching all his friends play football.
Oh, yeah,
He can join in, could he?
No. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, I think so.
So I was, like a lead into it. So I was born in Hull. Anybody know what a Hull? It's not Harrogate. It's different.
Drive through, otherwise if you stop, your wheels will be taken.
Left school at 15, some dead-end jobs. And then, RAF, my rescue, working up bravely. And out of the blue, somebody invited me to go over to India and help rescue a street charity working with street kids. They was building like an outdoor place for them, and they'd staffed it, and they got a lot of money to pull up magic buildings. And they're doing great work, but there weren't this lot of investment. It was almost like a holiday thing. They just wanted to make the kids happy, lots of singing and dancing, but it wasn't really getting through to their real lives. Anyway, so I went out there and I did about 6 months trying to do what I could do. And I hear this lovely story about, they used to work in the community in Mumbai, and they used to get the kids together and play football like that. And this was an area that had some area around the shipyard, so there was a bit of space. And a lad called J2, he was a goat herder. His family were rich in the sense they had some goats. And J2 used to watch the football and they go, come on, play football. I said, no, I've got to look after my goats. Another week, come on, J2, play football. No, I've got to look after my goats. So they had to talk. So, well, we'll go and speak to your mother. Mother, if we look after your goats, can J2 play football? No. It went on and on. Eventually, the mother said, okay, you look after the goats and J2 can play football. A year later, his mother was playing football and she kicked out her alcoholic, abusive husband. It wasn't the football, it was just the coming together, talking about life and alternatives for them, you know. Isn't that a great story? And the big story, an 11-year-old who lived on the railway and his friend had lost his legs for, you know, there's lots of tragedy around that. And the conversation, what would you like when you be, what's your ambition? I want to be a doctor. So you can't imagine street kids living on the thing. That desire to do better education, it's mind-blowing. And somebody said, well, what would you do if you lost your legs like Mohammed or something like that? He said, I'd slide on my arse to be a doctor. 11-year-old. So that made a big impression on me in the end. And all I did was talked about how that as well as doing fun stuff, you know, about creating relationships to people, having conversations about their life, and, you know, talking about alternatives. So raising their awareness, you know, how you manage yourself in that. So a big part of my life, which shapes me as well, yeah.
Rich, you and I were talking this week about conversations, right? Bear with me, I'll get there in the end. Because I was just, as I was listening to you both, I'm reflecting that actually what you were talking about there, Pete, was almost an enabling action that helps people talk, that helps people communicate, that builds connection. Yeah. Because quite often you see that situation where there's polarised views over which of the genders is better at communication, and men don't talk and they don't open up. And then there's that sense of, well, if I open up, what's the response I get? Because it's so unusual, you don't know how to respond, so therefore then you leave me at that point of vulnerability and I don't actually get the support I need, so therefore I've learned not to, and it's like that vicious circle. But what we're talking about there in that football, and quite a lot of it even in Braithey, Rich, is the creation of a space where it becomes safe to talk. Even if that's in small sections, because it removes the pressure, because there's that almost that distracting action that says I can drip feed this here and then I can come back to it when I'm a bit more comfortable, and that's how we learn to talk about these bigger things, how we learn to share.
Totally agree, and especially, I'm going to use the Samaritans again, that experience of being listened to, whether the person didn't really say anything, but you can tell the listening is mind-blowing, you know, to actually gather your thoughts together and think what they are and then find words or half words to describe them. That is a process of being able to understand yourself goes on at the same time, or see a new perspective. And the ability to talk in a marriage, in a partnership, in a business, honest, quality conversations. It's like the Mount Everest of life, you know. It's lots of us still in the valley.
And it's, so what you're kind of mentioning there, Ali, having that space and you, Pete, in a way, that's about developing trusts, which we talked about in previous podcast. And people have to dip their toe in the proverbial water to test if it's okay first, if they're able to open up. And if they can't, and if they're not able to, then they just shut down again. Or they may find another alternative. that may be not as healthy.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other piece of that is the patience of the receiver of that trust. That's where we have to learn to receive these gifts. It comes back to that loop at the start, doesn't it? We have to learn to receive in the right way, and that's to accept it for what it is at that point in time. Give space if the person wants to share more, but also not necessarily put the pressure on for more than that person's ready to give or share at that time.
You probably read about it and experienced it, especially men. That my cat's blacker than your cat. I tell a story. Oh, but when I was in town, it becomes a black cat conversation.
Yeah. Well, the Navy do. They have that term, don't they? The black catting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to actually listen and inquire, I find the quality of listening across the board is pretty poor in the world. Just can you explain more? I don't understand that. What was behind that? What was you thinking about that? Mm-hmm. It's not a skill set we're given in schools or anywhere, or even in families. We're told to kind of be confident, tell your stories, occupy the airways.
Yeah, I think when I was up on that course that you ran up at Braithwaite that time, one of the powerful messages that you had, or that was part of it, was about listening and how people, they get a conversation, they're involved in a conversation, they're not really listening, they're already thinking about what to reply to that person.
Yeah, they're preparing what they're going to say, practicing it in the head. Yeah, which brings me back, I create my own theories in my head, that we're all on some food chain or pecking order, and that just to listen doesn't promote you of the food chain. You've got to solve people's problems, or I don't know, criticize people or be sarcastic. There's lots of options, not always nice ones, but just to listen.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this previously. So I was away doing a conflict management course, and one of the guys there who was instructing, his wife had gone away to do her degree. Can't remember what it was in, and he said to her, "Oh, so what are you doing? What have you learned today?" And she said, "I've learned how to listen." He was like, "What are you talking about?" Anyway, so this continues on and on throughout her degree, and eventually he goes, "Oh." There's a conversation. He goes, "Oh, it's really hard to actually listen, isn't it? It's a really hard thing to do."
Really hard. Really hard. Yeah. Do you think also it's very easy to know or sense or feel when you're not being listened to?
Eyes glaze over.
Yeah. You're not listening. I know what you're going to say.
Well, is that my thinking face can sometimes look a bit glazed. My listening face can sometimes look a bit glazed.
Exactly.
It's almost like I am 100% tuned in at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But these are things that the assumptions that people make is reading people's body language, and I know what you're going to say next, and you're going to say this, and they have that story in their head.
I must say, people said, "Pete, you're a really good listener. You just, your face is." I said, "Actually, I'm just trying to hear you." Yeah, but people do appreciate being given to time to listen. We used to do I thought it was great. Nobody else did, but I enjoyed doing it. A listening exercise. So you talk about listening as a skill. We're going to practice it. And one was the speaker and one was the listener. And the listener had a limited vocabulary, like, "Oh, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more." And whatever the speaker said, you couldn't say that's not true. And the premise was that we'd give them the opening line, "I sat on the train," or something like that. And then you had to start the story, but you give them permission to go anywhere in the world. The person could say, "No, you never. It wasn't you on the train to Crewe. No, you never went. Tell me the real truth." and then said, "Oh, I was on a spaceship going to Mars," and then we went along, and these people used to have these amazing conversations where the people just said, like, "No, you never," and then it would go off to another tangent, "No, you never," and you got these two people really, really enjoying this conversation, and out of that manufactured thing, called arsing around, you got somebody really interested in the story, where it was going to go, and somebody really engaged and telling it, a bit scary at first, and they could talk for 5 minutes about a lot of crap, but there was actually being listened to. Really interesting. No, you never. The license to go anywhere you want.
Well, I think there's a difference in how people listen, because I've had people say I remember getting feedback from someone who said, "I've never been listened to in that way in my life." Now, that actually makes me quite sad, but at the same point, also curious as to what was different, because there's a lot of people that are taught active listening, which is the recap. But the problem with that is you're still all in your head.
You got a technique.
You're still up here, not present with that person.
Yeah.
And I actually think that the difference in the listening is when you are fully present. You are doing nothing other than being with that person in that moment. But that also means that both parties then have to get used to and familiar with the fact that sometimes that means there's a different rhythm to conversations. Sometimes there's slightly longer gaps to allow room for expansion, but also room for both parties to go, actually, this is my thoughts. This is what I want to know more about, or this is my question, or this is my reflection, or this is what I've heard you say. Because that happens after the speaking, not during. Whereas active listening, you're collecting all the information as you're trying to process that conversation at the same time, which means you're still not fully present. But when you're fully present with somebody, that's entirely different. Entirely different.
Once again, I agree completely, which leads me on to another story of mine, which that I've used. And I don't know, Rich, did I talk about my experience with these North American Indians?
No.
Well, there's a background story. Anyway, so I'm in this place in Wales, and there's some Native Americans. Although I used to be a probation officer in San Francisco, and his wife, Rainbow Hawk, and can't remember his wife's name. That was his Indian name. They'd come over to an organisation called He Hammer to pass over Native American wisdom to people who were struggling. And I went to meet somebody, and there was a backstory. So when I first went there, I said, "Is Susie here?" And Rainbow Hawk said, "No." He had a ponytail, like a big, like central casting from Hollywood. He said, "No, she's gone hunting buffalo." And fuck me. When he banged it out, so then he laughed and said, "No, she's gone to Tesco's." Anyway, so I met him, and then they had all these people who were paid to go there, about 20 of them. And he said this. He said, "Welcome. I hope your souls arrive soon." And people looked quizzing and said, "Your souls, the real you. The real you may be back at home doing this, doing that. It may be on the motorway, or it may be not here. Your mind may be somewhere else. So I invite all your souls to come here, to be present." And that was really grounded. Where am I? Am I actually in this place? And then halfway through the second day, he said, "Some of your souls may have learned enough, or maybe not learning. And they've said, I'll see you back there." I'm off.
Yeah, and that reminds me, Pete, of when we were in the yurt.
Yeah.
breakaway, and then everybody was telling their stories, and that's quite powerful. Is you've been heard. We hear you.
But that's what I dropped in that, and that's what they said. I have been heard. I have spoken.
I have spoken. That's right. Yeah.
I have spoken. I have heard. That's what Rainbow Hawk gave to me. Yeah. At least the end point of that, some of your souls may have gone. But strange, when I speak about them, they come back. Just that being present, hard to do.
Yeah, and I think possibly that's because people aren't present because they're always thinking about planning ahead, what's going on for dinner. Yeah. They're going to have work tomorrow and all that sort of stuff.
What's for tea?
Yeah. How can we be present?
How can we be present? Yeah. Especially with children. If you're around children, to be present with them, where they're, yeah. I see that a lot. That young people and their caregiver or parents on the phone, they're not present with the child. Opportunities missed. This has got nothing to do with. Has it got something to do with servicemen or just kind of?
Yeah, of course it does. It's relatable to anybody and everybody.
I think it's becoming just the best person you can be, and then you can do any job, kind of.
Yeah, be your authentic self, isn't it? As much as you can be.
Yeah.
And that's an old cliche that's thrown around.
It is a cliche, isn't it?
Well, is it a cliche or is it a truth?
Well, it's both. It depends on the authentic person that does turn up. And do they want to be that authentic with someone or just pretend?
I think it's cliche again. I think you've got to find your right tribe as well. And some tribes are not for you.
Oh, yeah.
And make that choice that who's good for you and who's not good for you, and try and, find the ones who are good for you.
I think it's also about learning how to be with a new tribe and how to build a new tribe round about, because if you've come from a very well-established tribe, all of your learned habits are still there. All of your learned behaviours, all of your learned responses in terms of what's right, how you respond, how you engage, the rhythm of a conversation are still there. But they don't necessarily all fit as you're building this new tribe. So it feels very unbalancing, unfamiliar, feels quite weird, like I don't fit. Well, actually, is it? Because sometimes when you get a nugget of that sense of fit again, there's almost like in that rush of the dopamine hit of, oh, at last, this is something I'm familiar with. There's almost like an overshare that can happen because it's been so longed for and it's been missing. So it's almost like, oh, there you are. And I think that comes back to how do we build trust. What you were saying earlier, Rich, is that there's a number of skills there. One is how to communicate differently. One is how to listen. The other is how to build your trusts so that you're not left in that vulnerable position, so that you can build and test the water, so to speak. Check the safety and the depth as you move forward to go, actually, okay, I know what you're capable of working with, and I know what fits here. And so that you're not necessarily overburdening anyone of this new network, but you're learning in small chunks too, so it's not an all or nothing.
Do you think there's an evaluation process, interesting what you say, that you working out this group, where do they fit into my future life? Are they important to me? Do I need to invest time, energy, or they'll just be the event of the day and tomorrow, and so you back off or...
Yeah. In a way, it's almost like you're checking tolerances as well, isn't it?
Well, this morning I was visiting a company up just outside Gloucester, and they specifically work with, they release people out on probation or veterans or members of the armed forces who've been in prison and have been released. So they may find it difficult getting work and all that. So these guys are trained up in all sorts of trade skills. And one of the best things that they do is, because they're not an industrial state, they help the guys get housing away from the halfway houses and all that sort of stuff, so they're not influenced and dragged back into potentially committing crime. So they're away from that tribe, and they can re-find who they want to be, their identity and all that sort of stuff. And I was chatting to them. They've had this one chap who, I have no idea what his past was. Obviously, he's been in prison, but he's now working for a very large construction company leading teams, because of the influence that these guys had in helping him break away from his situation.
Wow. A new tribe.
Yeah, whole new tribe.
Yeah.
And it's also, importantly, he's giving someone a chance.
That's also part about finding the part of that tribe's also the right environment, isn't it? Tribe is part of that, because tribe has a placement, a location, a structure to it, even if that structure is really loose, because it's the structure of trust that sit within that tribe.
I had a conversation with a guy who come from not the best background. He was a banker or trader, and they made lots and lots of money. And he was in Annabelle's or one of these Chelsea nightclubs. He had a model on each arm. He had a sports car outside. He had a penthouse on the Thames. And he had a nervous breakdown, like I wasn't in the right tribe, is what I wanted to be. But now I'm here. I'm not in the right tribe. It wasn't imposter syndrome, but it was, interesting.
Does that come down to that sense of safety? Because an important part of that tribe is feeling safe, is knowing that you are safe with them, that they are in turn safe with you. There's an element. It's almost like, so I'm thinking about the safety, belonging, freedom model, Rich, that Caitlin Walker developed.
Yeah. So do you want to give a bit of background on that, Ali?
Well, yeah, it's almost like a model of it's an extension from the idea of the triune brain, but I think actually I really like the safety, belonging and freedom. And it almost works that we have to have a core level of safety in order to then build that sense of belonging. And once we have those, then we can enable the freedom. We start to be more free in terms of our choices. But there's a lovely dynamic in there where for each person, they have to determine, as part of their life journey in a way, the importance and the size of each of those chunks. So for me, I know that personally, I would, if I'm in the right situation, I would trade some of my safety for more freedom, because freedom is by far the more important element within that triad for me. I would trade my belonging for the freedom, or some of that sense of belonging. For others, there will be a different balance in that makeup that says, this is what I'm seeking, this is what I'm looking. But underneath all of it, there have to be core elements of all of that. And it starts with safety.
Yeah. And several weeks ago now, I was kindly invited to go to an RAF association luncheon, and chatting to a couple of the guys there. One of the people, his grandson is autistic. One of the biggest concerns they had was how he would interact with people in general. So eventually they took this kiddie to football. And from there, this kid's just flourished. The football fans have really grown attached to him. So he joins in with the chanting and whatever else he's doing. So he's managed to find safety, his belonging, a sense of freedom to be who he wants to be within that.
It felt, not judged, not.
Yeah.
I revisited the model, that comfort, stretch, panic zone thing. You're probably familiar with it. And the combination was that some people never have a comfort zone. They're always uncomfortable through the environment they're in or the family they're in. They don't have that place to go back to recharge, to re-energize, to recenter. they're always in an uncomfortable zone.
Mm-hmm.
And then that conversation led to that. My stretch zone, maybe if I'm not getting what I want in life, maybe to petty crime. That you're now going into stretch zone where petty crime becomes bigger crime. So there is stepping out of your comfort zone doesn't always mean that you're stepping in the right direction. It's not always, it could be mal-development. And it's interesting to have that conversation with people. You know, where is your development heading? What's the consequence of that?
Is that also seeking the familiar? Because in some weird way, even if the familiar is unsafe, the knowing how familiar it is actually gives you a false sense of safety.
Yes.
So when you move into the unfamiliar, even if it is safer for you, better for you, it feels unsafe, it feels weird because it's unknown and unfamiliar.
Yeah, new feelings.
Yeah, well, as we say quite often, Ali, it's what somebody's normal is.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the experiences experienced a lot with working with young people at birthdays, that the ones who are really trouble, that you could do some wonderful stuff over 2 or 3 days, and the young person emerged out of that, and you saw them fully. But on the last night, it was others putting on their flat jackets and armour to go back to the environment that they're gone. They didn't go on a ever-increasing grade to be a outstanding citizen. They kind of like peaked, and then they descended. They was getting ready to go back to the streets. I thought that was really interesting.
So where's your focus lying now, Pete? 'Cause you talked about the Samaritans, and certainly before I met you, I heard a lot about what the scope of your influence just by being you and being present with people, and I've certainly seen that in the conversations we've had as well. So where's that taking you in terms of that influence and that engagement with the rest of the
Was it taking me? I think I was already on that road. I had some skills, but it's raised the level of my listening, not problem solving, but allowing people to feel they've got options. It made me feel how damn lucky I was. I read something about empathy. You show empathy because evolutionary, we're trying to make society better. So if I can be part of that, I'm one of the good guys. But it also teaches you, fucking hell, I'm not going to do what they've done. There's a lens cycle, how complicated their lives. But that's some amazing situations on both how vulnerable we are, but how resilient some people to survive horrendous experiences. What else has it taught me? Repeat, just to be listened to. And something to do with the gypsy community recently, and there's a big stigma about phoning for help, breaking down a lot of taboos there. And they thought Samaritans was all about suicide. But Samaritans emotional support, and that could be from saying, I've lost my car keys. That would be small. Or I've lost my job, or my partner didn't think, or I'm just lonely. And especially with mental health being what it was, those figures rising, and mental health services just can't be able to cope. 60% of calls about mental health. And what can you do with mental health? No, I can't fix it. But just to have somebody just to listen to them about their experience, humbling.
Yeah. As you mentioned, Pete, to us previously, is you don't consider yourself to be a guru or anything like that. You consider yourself to be an apprentice.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering where your apprenticeship is going next.
I don't know is the answer, but on this reunion, one of the guys I used to work with, we all have nicknames in the service, and this was Scouse. He was a medic, SAC, so low in the pecking order. He's now a professor of sports science in Liverpool, and he turned up. And this was about sport and performance, dealing with international athletes. But he's running a department now, and he's got about 20 psychiatrists in there. And it's taken his focus from muscles and performance into focus, determination, resilience, and he's becoming enraptured about what's going on upstairs and what separates those who can and those who can't. And I invited him to something I did recently. He couldn't make it, but it's like me being a fellow geek. We're just fascinated. We know where it's going, and we know that this knowledge is almost like a curse, but also a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting. He's on the same journey as we are. So it's not divine. Where will it go? I don't know. But I just hope it never stops. But it does a curse. You start to look at things in a different eyes. What the rest of the world just get on with it. But you start to step back. Yeah. I don't know if that was any form of answer there, Rich.
Kind of, yeah.
I don't know, basically. No. But I know it's part of me now. I can't just become now 100% golf or whatever.
Just improving your score. Have you got any takeaways for
people
who are listening? Yeah.
Takeaways. We all like hacks, don't we? We all like things which will make a problem disappear or create a solution. I think that personal development is an everyday journey with ups and downs. And one of my favourites is this chimp paradox, and that you will make mistakes. It's about look after yourself, be forgiving with yourself. You're not perfect. You will fuck up sometimes. Learn how to say sorry and laugh at yourself. And be also forgiving of other people. Our expectations of others are totally unrealistic sometimes. But that's not that's a thought rather than a hack. Be kind to yourself and kind to others. Sound like a freestyle. Totally agnostic.
No, I actually think that's something that a lot of us are not good at. We're quite good at being kind to other people, and we forget about ourselves in that equation.
Yeah,
we forget about our own. That sometimes starts with our own acknowledgements, acknowledging ourselves. And in a way, that means that all the focus becomes about other people, and we forget about us.
Yeah, laugh at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's stupid. Yeah,
there's a lot of that is laugh at. I tend to think that the weird things that happen in my life, that were things that other people go, that's so embarrassing. I'm like, oh no, wait till I tell everybody I know about that.
I know. We do like telling our stories of our own stupidity, don't we, sometimes?
Oh, Rich likes telling my stories too.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
They're more amusing than mine, Pete.
I know. Yeah. What's the word? Segue. I've got a son who had a name in mountaineering, and he's had a 5-year break because he became a dad later life, and he went back a few weeks ago to Yosemite. We're El Capitan. It's a big rock climbing area. And he was doing a climb before he did a climb with another guy. And he talked about when you go back at 53, you're almost going back and trying to find if that 21 is still within you. Do I have that same drive? Do I have that same that? And a lot of people come back and say no, but that's called maturity. I've moved on.
Yeah, but then I guess there's also different ways of scaling a mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just don't have to go up by rope and whatever it is, do you?
Well, the mountains are in your head as well, aren't they? So he set off on this climb. It was a 5-day climb, and the temperature in the valley at the time was touching 100. So it was way above what it normally is. And on the rock face, it was hot. So it was on this 5-day climb with 5 days water, but eventually took 10 days. So he didn't find the 21-year-old, but what he found, he was still a stubborn bastard. He didn't come down. Everybody else had come down, and he stayed up there. And he said one of the hardest climbs of his life, managing that. And then when he got down, the next day, he went back up again. And I was back in the UK trying to work out what the fuck was that about. And I think that's incredible. Some of us can...
Well, is that about recognising that actually it's not about the destination, it's about what you find out on the journey?
Well, yeah.
There's a number of people I know that spend their life, they go for a walk, and don't get me wrong, they're also the sort of people that are really irritated by me, because if you go for a walk or anywhere with me, it's like going out with a toddler. And Rich has threatened to put the drains on me and is eternally grateful that there are bells on me, because I have a purse with bells, so you can almost okay, I can hear her, she's over there, because he'll turn around and it's like, oh, crap, she's gone again. But actually there's a joy to be had in that spontaneity, because it means that you're present in the moment rather than just looking ahead and forgetting to see everything round about you.
I think that's true. I think in Andy's case, he's prepared to be uncomfortable to get the learning that he's seeking, But that's a very peculiar niche thing, isn't it? Prepared to be uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think if you reference back to being silent, to asking questions, you can loop it all back to that. These things are not comfortable. Some of the stuff situation I've been in with young people, they're not comfortable, but I've learned so much by not running away from them.
Well, that discomfort doesn't necessarily have to last forever either, does it?
Well,
it's only going to be a temporary thing. So, like your lad was up there for 10 days. 11th day he was back down, and he could have chosen, and eventually he might go back to the hotel or wherever he's come from.
Yeah.
I suppose that comes down to that other truth, isn't it? Which is everything was unfamiliar once.
Yeah. I mean, our ancestors were explorers, weren't they?
Yeah, we wouldn't have got here otherwise.
Where we gone? Yeah, we would have stayed in the cave.
Yeah. And is he still trying to sell Vaseline as dehydrated water?
Are you sure? I'm glad you watched that.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Good. Well, I'm done. My wisdom is empty.
Well, thank you, Pete.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Okay.
And look at yourself.
I hope we can repeat the conversation at some point.
Okay.